Star Walker Studios presents Game Master's Journey, your multi-dimensional RPG podcast. Hello, fellow gamer. Welcome to episode 269 of Game Master's Journey. I'm your host, Lex Starwalker. On this show, we discuss the craft and the art of game mastering. I've been running RPGs for over 28 years now, and I produce this show in hopes that you can benefit from my experience, my triumphs, and my mistakes. Brett is joining me on the show again today, and we are returning to our in-depth discussion of the Dungeon Master's Guide for D&D 5th edition. We are continuing on today with Chapter 9, Dungeon Master's Workshop. So today we're going to start talking about the combat options in Chapter 9. So we're going to talk about some initiative variants and then some action options, including climbing onto a bigger creature, disarming, overrun, shove aside, and tumble. Before we crack open the DMG, though, just a couple announcements. I am releasing my novel Dawn of Endless Night on the website over at starwalkerstudios.com/blog, chapter by chapter. By the time you hear this, I think there should be 7 or 8 chapters up there now, so quite a bit to read. Dawn of Endless Night is an urban fantasy set in the city of Chicago about a young man named Jeremy who becomes a vampire, and his kind of experience becoming part of this new world in the night. I'm really proud of it and had a lot of fun writing it, so I hope you enjoy reading it. Hope you'll check it out. Also, I have a few D&D supplements available on my website that I've published, the latest of which, Adventures of Primordia, is a bunch of player character options for D&D that I've come up with for my games, some of which you see featured in our actual play, Blood of the Avatars. So feel free to check that out as well. Also, just a couple quick notes about the episode today. First of all, I want to apologize for the sound quality not being as good as it usually is. At times there's a bit of static and such, and I'm not sure exactly what was going on. We were having some technical difficulties. They seem to have gone away now. I'm not sure what the deal was. I cleaned it up as much as I could in post, but there's only so much you can do without everybody sounding like robots. So did the best I can or could, and yeah, sorry about that. We should have that ironed out soon, hopefully. And also, we have a bit of a discussion at some point about Shield Bash. We were getting a little confused, and after recording this, we kind of figured out what was going on and what we were confused about. So there is not a Shield Bash maneuver per se in the game, but rather doing a shield bash is just using an improvised weapon. So I believe that's in the player's handbook, the rules for using an improvised weapon, which can really be anything. And so, yeah, that's the little bit that we were failing to remember in the episode. So as far as wall shield, he uses it as an improvised weapon that he has proficiency in. All right, so without further ado, we're going to bring Brett on board and crack open the DMG and once again return to the Dungeon Master's Workshop. All right, so combat options.
There's so much in here that I want to try that I haven't yet.
I was just going through this again earlier today, and this is going to be fun because there's a lot of things in here I really like, and there's 1 or 2 that I'm just like, there's no way I would ever use. So it'll be interesting to see what you think and talk about this stuff. So we're in Chapter 9 still, Dungeon Master's Workshop. We're on page 270. And yeah, today we're talking about various combat options you can try. So first we have initiative variance. So these are different ways maybe you could do initiative other than the standard way. So the first one is initiative score. So basically with this one, instead of having everybody roll initiative, everyone just uses their like a passive dexterity check as like their initiative score. So they're 10 plus their dex bonus. So there's no roll at all. And I guess, I guess you do the same thing with the monsters and stuff, right? You just look at their passive dexterity check and whoever's the highest wins.
Right.
And that's it. Pretty simple.
Seems like you would have more people with the same number.
Yeah.
Or you would run the risk of more people with the same initiative number. So you'd have to use something, because normally you would use dexterity to resolve who goes first.
Right.
When it's high, right?
But in this case, they'd probably have the same dexterity.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one thing to think about, what you would do with the ties. So I mean, this would definitely speed things up because there's no dice rolls involved.
True.
Your initiative score is always the same unless something changes your dexterity. So it's a number that you would just know eventually. Right. So I think it would definitely speed things up, but it would be kind of like your turn order would kind of be the same every combat.
Yeah.
At least among the players.
So for initiative variance, it really depends on what you're trying to get out of it. If you're not going to use the standard, right?
Right.
So I think you and I have different opinions on the standard initiative order, because you like to roll initiative beforehand, like at the beginning of the session.
Yeah.
And I like to jump it. I like pouncing on everybody with everybody rolling initiative as part of the initiation.
Yeah.
So it's understanding that does slow down that initial momentum of the combat. It's like the green light that says we're engaging in combat.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, yours is like you're always ready. Like you can like slip from story seamlessly into the combat, and you're, as a DM, you're ready to go. So with these alternates, it seems like depending on how you want to how you want to incorporate the initiative into the gameplay and that blend, like taking from the story mode of the game to the combat mode of the game. It seems like that's what you have to really focus on. It's the question you need to answer with these, whether or not you want to use it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this is just taste of the GM and the players, because like what you're saying, like we do it a little differently, and I do it the way I do it because as a GM, I like setting up the scene of like if we're going to do a combat and then just boom going right into it and not losing any like suspense or momentum or anything.
Right.
But like I think what you were saying is, the whole let's roll initiative. A lot of times it's kind of the signal of, okay, we're going in combat now. And it just that can kind of up the pucker factor, and that can actually build some suspense, because now we got to resolve initiative before we find out what happens next. And it gives the players a little time to worry about, do we want to do this combat or not? Should we have done this? Are we in trouble?
Right. That's a good point.
So yeah, I don't think that it's a clear, like, this way's better than that way. It's kind of what you like. And I think that the standard initiative works better when you're using like a grid, because while the players are rolling initiative, the GM can be setting up the minis and stuff like that.
Right.
Where like my method, I'm mainly using theater of the mind, or if we're using a grid, it's online and everything's already set up, so I don't need time to like set everything up at the beginning of the combat.
Right.
So if I were running like in person with miniatures, I might go back to the standard way, just because it's like, well, we're going to have some downtime anyway, because I got to put the miniatures where they need to be. And so while I'm doing that, the players can roll initiative
and think about what they want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So this variant is saying, hey, you could just have them have a number.
So it's just a straight. Yep. So it takes the time away from the from the rolling it up front. A lot like rolling ahead.
Now, one thing you could do, well, I guess I have a couple thoughts here. First is, you don't necessarily have to do it the same way every time. So this might be a variant you use sometimes. Like if you have a certain combat you just want to get through, or you're running out of time in the session or something, this might be a way to speed up a particular combat. And you just say, hey, this time we're not going to roll initiative. Just use your passive dexterity roll or whatever.
Right.
Or, as I just forget the other point I was going to make. Must not have been that important.
Yeah, I think
I remember now. I was going to say, or maybe, and I'm kind of surprised they don't mention this, maybe you could use this for your monsters and NPCs and still have the player characters roll. But if you're doing like a combat with a lot of different types of monsters, unless you're going to roll initiative ahead of, like before the session, like I do for your NPCs, this could be a way to speed up your part of it.
That's true.
Instead of having to roll, like if you've got 20 different NPCs in the combat, instead of having to roll 20 initiatives, you could just use their scores.
Right.
So what were you going to say, Brett, before I interrupted you?
No, now I don't remember. I know it wasn't important.
This is going to be the rest of this discussion. I interrupt you because I remembered something I forgot, and then you forget what you were going to say because I interrupted you, and then we started talking about something else, and then you interrupt me because you remember the thing you were going to say.
Yeah, we'll be 2 pages ahead, and I'll remember what it was.
I'll just keep going back and forth.
Yep. Yeah, I really don't have anything else to say on this initiative score, on the dexterity score. It's I can see where it would have uses. I probably wouldn't use it myself unless I was using. I was trying to find a fast way to do it for NPCs. Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, like I'm thinking of, like, you might have an encounter where maybe the player character is going to fight like some pretty tough opponents, like giants or something, and then maybe there's some like weaker like goblins in there too. I might use this for like the goblins and be like, you know what, I'm not going to roll initiative for the goblins. I'll just use their static score, but I'll roll for like the big guys, that are actually going to be a threat. All right. So the next one, side initiative. We kind of did this in our Numenera game. This is kind of how we did it.
Okay.
So basically with this, you just have 2 initiative rolls. You have the players make 1 roll. They just roll a d20 and there's no modifiers. And then you make a roll for the NPCs.
Right.
And no modifiers. And whoever gets the highest roll wins. And then each side goes. So if the players win initiative, all the players go. And then all the bad guys go. Or vice versa, if bad guys win. And this is what we did in our Numenera game that we just did. Was you guys just made 1 initiative roll. Well, actually, the way we did it was you guys all rolled initiative, and as long as one of you beat the monster initiative, then you guys all went first.
Right.
So that was very forgiving you guys almost always went first.
Yeah. And it was a little disorganized because every time we entered into combat, we would have a quick discussion amongst ourselves. Who was going to go first? Who was going to go next?
Right. Yeah.
If somebody wasn't ready, they would go to the next person, and then they could do what they wanted. And sorry for that. I delayed the game quite a bit, not knowing what to do. It seemed like it was in its efficiency. It seemed like it was almost more chaotic.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. And this works the same way. So, each side rolls a d20, no modifiers. Whoever gets the highest goes first. But then when you're talking about a given side, they can go in any order they want. So if you're talking about your NPCs and monsters, you can have them go in whatever order you want.
Right.
And the players, when it's their turn, they can go in any order they want. And that can add quite a bit of disruption if every round they're deciding, okay, who's going to go first, who's going to go second. Something I've done in Numenera in the past to kind of avoid that is I would have and I probably should have done that with you guys. I would have the players at the beginning of the session decide what their turn order is going to be amongst themselves.
Yeah.
And then if they really needed to, they could change that. But in general, they just use that order, and then that kept it kept it going. So every round, it's not like who's going to go next,
Right. That would be good for the DM side. Just because I know that my strengths in the brain, I can see a case where when you're running a side initiative like this, you can very easily overlook some NPCs or overlook some as you're going through each one. If you don't have that running list, or the order based on their role or their dexterity, where you can go through, especially if you're working with a bunch of NPCs, a bunch of different NPCs. It would be so easy to overlook one or two that don't get a turn.
Yeah,
for the players would be easier to pipe in and say, "Wait a minute, my turn." But
yeah, I think there are definitely some downsides to this. I mean, one of them is, and I think they mentioned it in here. If the players go first, they're all going to get to do something before any of the NPCs can do anything. And you're going to have combats where the players just wipe everything out and your NPCs never get to act. And it's like, should they even get experience for that? Was there really any danger when the NPCs never even got an action? Like, or it could go the other way. If they lose initiative, then all of the bad guys get to do something before they get to do anything. And that could be really bad for the players. That could
be catastrophic. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's going to be, every combat's kind of going to be like that. Whichever side goes first has a pretty big advantage.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, one I guess positive of it is the players can strategize a little bit more if they have abilities or a plan where like the turn order matters among the players. So they can say, oh, the fighter goes and then the cleric goes and then the wizard goes or whatever order they need for whatever they're trying to do.
Right. That would eliminate a lot of the cases where in gameplay you would have one person trying to coordinate with another player on like on something to facilitate a, what am I trying to say? Like they're trying to do something specific where they're joining forces to like bash open a door or they're setting a trap or something like that, and or leaping across something, where they have to rely on a second person that's further down the initiative order.
Right.
So they'd have to hold their turn or hold their action. That would alleviate that quite a bit.
Yeah, and the way the mechanics work, like with holding an action, is when you do that, you basically, you give up your reaction because you're going to use your reaction to do the thing.
Right.
And when you get that action, you only get like one action. You don't get like the movement and everything else that you would normally get. So it's
you don't get your full turn. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're kind of sacrificing a bit to be able to do that. Where in this system, you could do those kinds of things and there wouldn't be any sacrifice because you can go in any order that you want.
As you're saying that, I'm realizing just how strict the initiative order is.
Yeah.
Standard initiative rules.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I would tend to do some kind of variant, just letting the players maybe like exchange initiative numbers or something, as opposed to doing something like that. Like if they have something like what you're talking about, where it really matters who goes in what order, maybe two of the characters can just swap initiatives for a turn or something. I don't know. Or you just let them do it that one turn.
Yeah. I can't remember. I can't remember which game it was. I don't know. I don't remember if it was, I don't think it was 3.5, but maybe Rollmaster or something like that, where we were able to, maybe it's Shadowrun, where we were able to, when we rolled the initiative, we had our initiative number. You could go at that time or any time after that.
Yeah.
So you could basically hold your action or hold your entire turn.
I think 3rd edition was like that. You could do that. Yeah. Because I remember one of the Sage Advice interviews on the Dragon Talk podcast, they were talking about the whole like delaying your action thing and why they did it the way they did. And kind of the reasoning was that the way it was in 3rd edition, if I remember right, you could do that. So you could say, okay, if I'm initiative 18, I can go on 18, but I can go after that if I want. But what Jeremy Crawford was saying basically was the problem with that is then that becomes like a strategic choice that you have to make every single round. Like every round you have to think, should I go on my initiative or would it be better to wait? And it just adds more decision making and tends to slow things down, because then the players will want to discuss, hey, should I take my turn now or should I go later? And so that was part of the reason they did it the way they did. So you can still do that if you want to, but there's enough of kind of a penalty to it that you're only going to do it when you really need to, and you're not going to feel like every turn you have to do that to like maximize. Or, maybe it wasn't 3rd edition. I think Pathfinder works that way.
Oh, okay.
See, now I played so many games, I can't remember what's what. But yeah, like you, I know I've played a game somewhere that worked that way.
Yeah.
And I do remember like that being discussed among the players almost every round. Like, hey, when should we all take our turns? What's, the most effective thing to do? So it does kind of slow things down a little bit. And it's just more you have to worry about. It's like you got enough to worry about with all your abilities and spells and deciding what you're going to do without adding in, when am I going to go? So, yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that decision that they made.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems strict, but I can see where abuse would happen. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So next one is what I was thinking of earlier when I said there's things in here I definitely would never use. And that's speed factor. And I remember this from like 2nd edition, I think, had this as like an optional rule. So this basically is going to take initiative and make it a little more, quote, realistic or more complicated. Would be another way to say it.
That's the best way to say it.
So speed factor is basically taking into account the idea that certain things that you try to do will just naturally be faster than other things. So the first part of this system is you roll initiative every turn.
Right.
So every round, everybody has to roll initiative, which I assume this would apply to the NPCs and monsters too.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And then in addition to your normal initiative roll, which is just, roll 20 and add your dex bonus, then you get these modifiers based on what you're going to do to reflect, that some things are slower. So I think it'll make more sense when we go through the modifiers. Yeah. So for instance, if you're casting a spell, whatever level the spell is, you subtract that from your initiative. So the idea is like casting a 9th level spell takes longer than casting a 1st level spell.
So when you say it out loud, it makes sense.
Oh, it definitely makes sense.
But yeah.
But it's just like, do you want to deal with it?
Right.
So if you're using a heavy melee weapon, that's a -2 to your initiative. If you're using a melee, or I think what they mean here is a light or finesse melee weapon,
right,
it's a +2. So like if you're using, a heavy weapon like a maul, you're going to be a little slower than someone with a dagger. Like that makes sense.
Right. But if you're using something like a rapier or finesse weapon like that, then it's faster.
Right. Let's see. A 2-handed melee weapon is a -2. And these can be cumulative. So if you're using a heavy weapon that's 2-handed, that's a -4 to your initiative. Using a ranged loading weapon like a crossbow is a -5.
You're going last. You're just going last.
Yeah. And then there are modifiers based on your size. So if you're tiny, you get a +5. If you're small, you get a +2. Medium is 0. It doesn't affect it. And then if you're large, it's a -2, huge -5, gargantuan -8.
Wow. So a gargantuan player character, or a gargantuan enemy with a ranged loading weapon like a crossbow would be -13, worst case scenario.
Yeah. So I mean, right away, this is greatly going to slow down play. Because you got to remember all these modifiers and apply them correctly. All the players have to use them. You have to use them for all your characters. And you got to resolve initiative every single turn instead of once per combat.
And something that I consider as a huge downside, it removes a certain degree of improv, because on a creature's turn, it takes the normal move and all of that, but it has to take the selected action that it chose as part of the initiative, or take no action at all.
Oh yeah. I'm glad you said that. I totally forgot about that. Another big part of this is you have to declare your actions ahead of time.
Right.
Your action and your bonus action, and then when your initiative comes, you either have to do what you said you were going to do, or you have to do nothing.
That's a huge drawback.
Yeah, and I've played D&D just trying, I think at 3rd edition, just trying different ways to run the game.
Mhm.
I've played it where we tried doing it where this kind of thing where at the beginning of the round everybody says this is what I'm going to do, and then we resolve it. And yeah, it's a pain in the ass because things will happen that will make people want to do something differently,
Right.
and they can't. Like the cleric's like, I'm going to heal the fighter, and then the fighter gets killed. Well, my cure light wounds isn't going to help him now,
Right.
But I can't do anything else, so I just lost my turn, basically. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you said something. I can't believe I forgot because that's a major part of this is the fact that you have to declare what you're going to do, and then you have to do that. And then as a DM, you got to do that too.
Right.
So yeah.
And you have to hold yourself to those rules. Good luck with that.
Yeah, I just think it's funny because here I am. I've come up with my own kind of initiative variant that I use because I think just having them roll initiative at the beginning of the combat takes too long. And here's a variant where, you're going to roll initiative every single round. So if you have a 10-round combat, that's 10 initiative rolls.
Yeah.
And Brett, we've both played and run enough 5th edition, like how long a good combat takes.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how much longer it would take if every round you had to roll initiative?
No. Yeah, just a simple combat or an encounter can take easily an hour, sometimes 2.
Yeah. Well, we tend to have like 2.5-hour sessions,
right,
in our campaign right now, and it's all we can do to have one combat and some other stuff and get it all in one session.
Right.
And a lot of times we have to end the session in the middle of the combat, and like if we did this, it would always be like that.
Oh no.
Yeah. So this is for a very specific group, I think.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure there are people out here that would enjoy that. Not my cup of tea.
And yeah, and this is a perfect example of how, what's most realistic isn't necessarily what's best for your game. Because I think this is definitely more realistic. It definitely makes sense to me that if I'm a small halfling using a dagger, that I could be able to attack a lot quicker than a large giant using a heavy 2-handed sword.
Right.
Like that totally makes sense, but it just like the gameplay isn't going to be what I want if I use this.
No,
personally. But
you have to. Yeah, you can't sacrifice. You can't sacrifice the movement of the story, of the movement of the encounter. You don't want to bog it down so much that people get lost, especially if you have a party of a large group of people. This would take forever to try to get through.
Yeah. If there were a way you could use the speed factor, but only have to roll initiative once per turn. Well, maybe what you could do is, I don't know if this would really help, but you could still just do the one initiative roll, and then that's their number, whatever they rolled. And then what they do every turn is the modifier to that number, but use that same number as like your starting number. So you wouldn't have to do the roll every turn. But they still have to say what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And then apply the modifier. So I don't know that it would really, because rolling the die doesn't take that much time. It's all the other stuff. So it probably wouldn't help a whole lot. So, I mean, I don't want to be like, this is terrible, nobody should use it. I'm sure there are people out there that would like this.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it was either 1st or 2nd edition had this, and I played under a GM who used the speed factor roll, and that was they had different values for every single weapon. Like this at least says if it's a light or a finesse, it gets this. If it's heavy, it gets that. Right. That was like, if you're using a long sword, it's this. If you're using a bastard sword, it's this.
Oh, okay. I have a scenario where this would be interesting to play.
Okay, cool.
A one-on-one, like gladiator or cage match.
Yeah.
Where the stakes are high. It's like it's like a boss battle, really.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm glad you thought of that because I wanted to say something positive about this. Because I'm sure there's times you could use it, and that's perfect. Like,
and that would shake it up. That would actually shake up a one-on-one combat where if everybody else is doing something, or if they're watching this, like I using Critical Role as the example again.
Well, I was just thinking of that.
A couple of those, yeah.
I was thinking of that exact scene.
Okay, cool.
That's hilarious.
Where it's a constant one-on-one, and instead of every round, PC will go, then NPC will go, and then it just rotates back and forth. This will throw it out of balance.
Yeah, and where it's like a battle of champions, where you really want to kind of slow things down and make every round kind of drawn out. And then like that could be for the PC, like playing Grog, that could be a tactical thing of, well, yeah, I could attack with my great axe, which does a shit ton of damage, or I could pull my dagger and get an attack in before this guy can hit me. Right. Maybe I've got poison or something on my dagger. Like it could bring in a strategic or tactical element that you normally wouldn't have.
Or maybe you feel like this guy only has like, a handful of points left, of HP left, and you need just that quick jab to finish up before you go down.
Now that you say, I think this would be perfect for that. In fact, I hope if I ever have that in one of my games that I remember this to do that, because I think that would be awesome in a way to make that kind of one-on-one duel really put a spotlight on it and make it more engaging. Especially if it's like what it was with Critical Role, where the rest of the players are there watching. Yeah. It's not like a vignette where the DM's with the player, but it's like everybody's there, but it's only really the one character fighting.
Right.
It makes it more dramatic and interesting for the players watching too, I think.
Right. Exactly.
And they could even be like cheering him on, like telling Grog, use your dagger, the axe is too slow.
Secretly adding buffs.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great idea, man. And I'm glad you thought of that because I wanted to like come up with something where you would use this, and because I do think it's a cool mechanic.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't want to use it all the time.
No.
Or maybe if you're running like a solo campaign, you might use it because then, you're going to have one player always, and you're going to have a smaller number of monsters that they're fighting just because there's only one of them. So it'd be less of a slowdown, and it would make it more interesting.
That's true. That would be.
Yeah. Or maybe if you just have a small group, like only 2 players or something, maybe it would work. I don't know.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we covered that.
Shall we move on to auction options? Let's move on to the auction options.
Yes. Let's options and auctions, or what?
Yeah.
Action options. So these are great.
It's fun.
Yeah, these are things I always hope I remember when the time comes to use one of them, because they're pretty situational, a lot of them. But these are just some new things you can do with your actions, or some things that like you might just do on the fly, but here's a little bit of mechanical guidance for you.
Oh yeah. So, a lot of these things are things that I would like Wall to do at some point.
Yeah.
To try. So the first one is he wouldn't do this. Climbing onto a bigger creature. Unless we're talking about a red dragon.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's the basic scenario where you're fighting something bigger than you, and you want to jump onto it to get a closer attack or to prevent it from doing something.
Yeah, and they say the way you would probably normally do that is a grapple, like an opposed grapple kind of thing. Right. But they point out, if your character is small or medium and you're trying to do this to a huge or gargantuan creature, just by the way the bonuses for like athletics and stuff work, like you'd never be able to do it. Like it's always going to beat you on that grapple check. So this is a way that you can make it more likely that they could actually do it. So So as an alternative, a suitably larger opponent can be treated as terrain for the purpose of jumping onto its back or clinging to a limb. After making any ability checks necessary to get into position and onto the larger creature, the smaller creature uses its action to make a strength athletics or dexterity acrobatics check contested by the target's dexterity acrobatics check. So right there, that's what makes it easier, because the target has to use acrobatics instead of athletics.
Right.
Which your big, huge creatures are not going to be great at that.
No.
They'll have all kinds of strengths, but not so much dexterity usually. So if the character wins the contest, then the smaller creature successfully moves into target creature's space and clings to its body. While in the target's space, the smaller creature moves with the target and has advantage on attack rolls against it.
Yeah.
So this would be great for like your halfling rogue.
Oh yeah.
Like can get advantage on its attack rolls, which means it gets to do its sneak attack damage. And
that's right.
And it's just so thematic and cinematic, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Like clinging to the back of the dragon, stabbing it while it's flying around. Let's see. The smaller creature can move around within the larger creature's space, treating the space as difficult terrain. The larger creature's ability to attack the smaller creature depends on the smaller creature's location and is left to the GM's discretion.
That makes sense.
Yeah, like if it's on their back, they probably can't attack it, but if it's on their leg or something, they could.
Right.
The larger creature can dislodge the smaller creature as an action, knocking it off, scraping it against the wall, or grabbing and throwing it by making a strength athletics check contested by the smaller creature's strength athletics or dexterity acrobatics. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I dig that this makes it easier for you to get on, but the bigger creature can still use athletics to grab you and throw you off.
Oh yeah.
It's like giving the character just enough rope to hang themselves with. But yeah, this is, a lot of us in D&D, we like the real kind of swashbuckling action kind of stuff. And this is really perfect for that.
Yep.
Especially if you're fighting really big creatures or if you've got smaller characters like halflings in the group that are really nimble. Or pixies. Of course, pixies can fly, so I guess they wouldn't really
yeah. But if that's cool. No, I think this is great. I have no downside to this.
It's nice and simple. Like
it is.
It's easy to remember, easy to use.
Really, when you think about it, it's the same roles.
Yeah.
The only difference is that the larger creature doesn't have the strength roll, the option of the strength roll.
Right.
It has to be dexterity. But then after that, it's using the same mechanic essentially.
Yeah, and specifying that once they're on the creature, it's difficult terrain.
Right.
Which I think a lot of us would probably just do that on the fly anyway, just because it makes sense. Like it's going to be harder to move around than just walking on the ground.
Right.
But I think halflings, we keep talking about halflings, but I think, don't they have something about ignoring difficult terrain or something like that?
Sure-footedness, or I can't remember. I've never played a halfling, but they've got something for that.
I think maybe they have something to make them even better at this.
Because they don't have shoes.
Yeah.
Stereotypically.
Yeah, so this is definitely one that, I mean, it's kind of situational, but something that if I had a player character want to do this, that I'd really hope I'd remember this is in here and to use it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and when you're fighting a big something, whether it's a dragon or purple worm or something like that, you want to get into that cinematic effect. You want to get into the you get the visuals, right, of what you're trying to do. You don't want to do a row of characters throwing arrows at it while a team of others run up and just hack at it with swords. You want both players and DM, they want the crunchy stuff, the good stuff, the cinematic experience.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, awesome. And yeah, it also will make more sense. Like if you've got a halfling rogue and you're going to backstab the fire giant, like it makes more sense that you would climb up his back and like stab him in the neck or something.
Right.
Then somehow you're going to backstab him in his ankle, And I like that they get advantage on the attack.
Yeah, because they're close up, can't do anything with it. It's like it's like it is an opportunity attack because you're attacking without the chance of the larger creature being able to defend.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also, it's giving you an incentive to do that. So it's like, not only will it be cool, but you'll also be more likely to hit, or if you're a rogue, you'll be able to do your sneak attack.
And there's still that element of potential failure there.
Yeah.
Just, through the dex checks.
And hilarity if it grabs you and throws you. That'll be fun.
Yeah. The hilarity will probably come in retelling the story later.
Yes.
But
I'm sure the DM will find it hilarious at the time,
I'm sure.
but the players might not.
Note to self.
All right. So we're both fans of that one.
Yeah.
Next is Disarm. This will come up for sure.
Oh, yeah.
At some point, if not every session. Someone will want to disarm someone.
Yeah, and I'm surprised it doesn't come up more often. This one's again. This is pretty simple, actually. More simple, it seems like, than the climbing. Basically, a creature can use a weapon attack to knock out a weapon or another item from the target's grasp. The attacker makes an attack roll contested by the target's strength or athletics check or the acrobatics check for dexterity. If the attacker wins the contest, the attacker causes no damage or other ill effect, but the defender drops the item.
Yeah, pretty simple.
Yeah.
And then, they have the attacker has disadvantage if they're holding it with both hands.
Mm-hmm.
Which that makes sense. If they've got like a two-handed sword, it's going to be harder to knock it out of their hand than if they're just holding it with one hand.
Right, and vice versa. The target has advantage or disadvantage. Wait, so the target has advantage on its ability check if it's larger than the attacking creature, or the disadvantage if it's smaller. So okay, interesting. So what's not in here? What if the target is holding it with two hands?
Well, then you have disadvantage on your attack to hit the weapon.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So if they are using something two-handed, you have disadvantage to like disarm them. And then if one of you is bigger than the other, that affects it too.
Right. Okay.
Because if you're bigger than the person you're disarming, it's going to be easier. And if they're bigger than you, it's going to be harder.
Those poor halflings.
Yeah, and this is another great example of how like elegant and simple advantage and disadvantage are. We don't have to worry about, you're going to have a bonus or a penalty, and what is it going to be? +1, +2, +5. It's like you just have advantage.
Right. You have a chance of getting a higher roll than you normally would.
Yeah, but we don't have to remember like a specific bonus,
right?
Or look it up.
Yeah, that's the best thing, especially with this. Is if you can remember that it is an optional rule to do it this way, or if disarm is an optional action, all you have to remember is the advantage. You don't have to look up tables. You don't have to look up, whether you're hitting it with a sword versus a mace or anything like that, or pole arm.
And another thing I like this is it gives you more options than just I attack and kill my opponent,
right?
Which I like. Like maybe you want to take someone alive, so disarming them could be part of that, getting them to surrender. Or maybe you want something, maybe they've got a potion out and they're going to drink it on their next turn. And you don't want them to drink the potion, or you want the potion. You can try to disarm the potion or the super powerful magic item they're about to use or whatever. It just seems like there'd be a lot of times where this would be handy.
Right.
All right. I'm really curious to see what you think about the next one, Brett.
Yeah,
I go back and forth on this myself.
I'll let you go through it because I can't remember it.
So this is Mark. So this option makes it easier for melee combatants to harry each other with opportunity attacks. So the way this works is when you make a melee attack, you can also mark your target. So you attack an NPC or whatever with melee attack, and you say, I'm marking this target. So until the end of your next turn, any opportunity attack you make against the marked target has advantage. So that's the first benefit for marking, is if you get an opportunity attack, it's going to have advantage.
Right.
Also, the opportunity attack doesn't take your reaction, which normally it would. So normally, if you make an opportunity attack, you have to use your reaction to do that. This is letting you do it without using your reaction, so you can use your reaction for something else.
Right.
Like casting the shield spell or something. Okay, so the opportunity attack doesn't expend the attacker's reaction, but the attacker can't make the attack if anything, such as the incapacitated condition or the Shocking Grasp spell is preventing it from taking reactions. And you're still limited to one opportunity attack per turn.
Oh.
So basically, it's kind of weird. So basically, it doesn't use your reaction, but you can't do it if something is preventing you from taking reactions.
Right.
And you can still only do one opportunity attack. So you can't use your reaction to do another opportunity attack, but you can use it if you have something else you can do with your reaction. You can still do that thing.
Right.
So it's in addition to that.
It's not as OP as I first thought it would be.
Yeah, the only thing that's really at all OP about it is that you're getting advantage on that opportunity attack.
Right. And you're getting to use an actual reaction after that.
Yeah. The thing I'm not sure I like about this is I feel like if I tell the players this is a thing you can do, they're going to do it every single time they melee attack someone. Like, why would you not? It doesn't say like it takes your bonus action or something to mark them.
True.
It's just part of the. So why would you not use this? Like it would be not smart to not use this every time.
Right. I can see thematically, I can see how it would make sense if you're fighting somebody. I wouldn't call it marking per se, but you would be paying attention to them so that you'd be able to get the jump on them if they did something like that. If they were able to like push themselves away or try to escape or something like that, where you would have the chance for that opportunity attack. But then even as I'm describing it, I'm like, that's pretty much exactly what the opportunity attack is.
Yeah.
That's what it's for, is because you're paying attention to that guy. I'm not sure. I don't think I would use this, but I'm not really, I'm not offended by it.
Yeah. I think just if you're considering this, I think you just have to assume or at least be prepared for the possibility that they're going to use this all the time.
Right.
And are you okay with that?
Exactly. So would this conflict with something like Hunter's Mark that already exists?
I don't think Hunter's Mark has anything to do with opportunity attacks. I think you just do more damage.
Okay.
I think you do extra damage when you hit them.
And you can, I'm just wondering if it's like one extra thing that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it would be. But then if you have, what is it, Hex and like other spells that the different classes have.
Well, and then the other thing is, I mean, the NPCs can do this too then. So wouldn't you as a DM, wouldn't your NPCs always be marking the character they're fighting?
Absolutely.
So I don't know. I'm personally, I'm not a fan of optional rules that it's like, if we use this optional rule, it's going to come into play every single round of every single combat.
Yeah.
Because that's just adding complexity and it's going to slow the game down, I feel like.
Yep, I agree.
I more like optional rules that are for like the climbing on a bigger creature. They're like niche things that aren't going to happen all the time, but when it does, it'll be cool.
Right.
Or even disarming. I mean, even if I tell the players, hey, you can disarm and this is how you do it, they're not going to be doing it every fight.
No.
Because that's not something that they would always want. But I feel like the marking, like why, I mean, I can't think of a downside. Like, why would you not want to mark your target? Why would that just not be part of how you fight? I mean, there's no negative to it.
No, so what if it doesn't say anything about switching targets, does it?
No, it just says whenever you make a melee attack. So I would think if you attack someone else, then you could mark that target instead.
Yeah, because it renews at the end of the turn, at the end of the attacker's turn. Yeah, it's not something.
And it also doesn't seem to affect your other opportunity attacks. So let's say you're in melee with two hobgoblins and you mark Hobgoblin A and Hobgoblin B tries to run away. You can still use your reaction and do an opportunity attack on Hobgoblin B. You just don't get advantage.
Well, the last sentence does kind of leave it up to GM interpretation, I think. It says the attacker is limited to one opportunity attack per turn. Yeah,
so then you couldn't opportunity attack the one you marked.
Right.
But there's nothing keeping, like I'm just trying to look for a downside and I don't see a downside. Like maybe if it was like, you can only opportunity attack the target you marked,
right?
Like that would be a downside because then if Hobgoblin B runs off, you can't do anything.
You can't, that takes it away, right?
So I don't know. Yeah, this one kind of has me scratching my head.
Yeah, leave it up for whoever wants it.
Yeah, I don't think I would use it. Or if I did, I would try to figure out a negative for it, some kind of downside. So you're not just feeling like you have to do this every turn.
Right. I think for me, this would just needlessly add to complications in combat.
Yeah.
I don't think it would add anything to the encounter, positive or negative. It would just make it more complicated.
Yeah. Especially when you consider that you probably want to do this for the NPCs too.
Right. And the minute you remember it first and the PCs don't, there's going to be a conversation about fairness.
Yeah. All right. Anything else about marked?
Nah. I think we can leave that unmarked.
All right. Next is overrun.
Yeah.
So when a creature tries to move through a hostile creature's space, that creature can try to force its way through by overrunning the hostile creature. So you just mow them over. As an action or a bonus action, the mover makes a strength athletics check contested by the hostile creature's strength athletics check. The creature attempting the overrun has advantage on this check if it's larger than the hostile creature, or disadvantage if it's smaller. If the mover wins the contest, it can move through the hostile creature's space once this turn. So this is basically just letting you move through a hostile space, which normally you can't do.
Right.
Like it doesn't actually, it sounds like it knocks them down, but it doesn't actually do that.
No, if anything, it would probably push them aside, or it doesn't knock them prone.
No, it doesn't really affect them at all. It just lets you move through their space.
It makes an opening, right?
So if you're a halfling, you don't need this because you can already do that. I'm
right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Halflings keep coming up today.
Or going down. Sorry. Didn't mean to do that while you were drinking. This is another circumstantial one.
Yeah.
That would be, it's good to know it's there for when it's needed, for sure.
And it can be, I think, used with other things like the shield bash.
Yeah.
Or the next thing we're going to talk about, shove aside. I could see you using those together.
Right. Let me just look up shield bash again really quick.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think it is in Player's Handbook, right?
I think so. Probably in the combat chapter.
Because that would be, I should know shield bash. Oh, you know what? I have it on my screen from Wall. I have it written down. Or do I just have shove? I just have shove. Never mind.
I'm going to just really ask for it and try the index.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Oh, yeah, it's not even in there.
Well,
shields, see armor and shields. Because, it'd be too hard to put the fucking page number there. Armor and shields.
I'm trying bashing now.
Shoving a creature, there's that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's under the shield?
Is it a feat?
Oh, yeah, that could be a feat. I think you're right.
That's why I remember it. Okay, let me look at Wall really quick.
Yeah, it's like shield something or other.
Shield Master.
Shield Master. Yeah, that one lets you shove a creature 5 feet.
Right.
Anyway.
I know there's something. I know I didn't. Yeah, it's there somewhere. It's something.
Maybe we'll get to it in this chapter. It might be in here. Maybe. Although I don't think it is because I went through this earlier.
Well, that actually does segue nicely into the next one.
Yeah, shove aside.
Yeah. Did you have anything else about overrunning?
Mm-mm. So this one uses the special shove attack from the Player's Handbook to force a target to the side rather than away. So you have disadvantage on your strength athletics check when you try to do this. If the check is successful, you move the target 5 feet to a different space within your reach. So pretty simple. Now I'm like, I should have left my other book open to talk about the shove thing since they're referencing that.
Oh, crap. Yeah, I had that open. Okay, so shield bashing, from what I can find just on a quick search, it isn't really a thing.
Yeah, I think it's just that feat.
Yeah. Oh, I know what I'm thinking of. I don't know if this might have been a home brew, or more specifically a shield brew for Wall's special shield. But we have on here, he has the ability to shield bash. So he basically uses the shield as a club mechanics.
Okay.
For the mechanic descriptions as a bludgeoning weapon. That's all. So yeah, I don't think there's anything specific about that. But for shoving now.
Yeah, so shoving, this is in the player's handbook in the combat. Well, it's on page 195, at least in the first. This is my old first printed one that's falling apart. But it says using the attack action, you can make a special melee attack to shove a creature, either to knock it prone or push it away from you. If you're able to make multiple attacks with the attack action, this attack replaces one of them.
Right.
The target of your shove must be no more than one size larger than you, and it must be within your reach. You make a strength athletics check, contested by the target's strength athletics or dexterity acrobatics check. If you win the contest, you either knock target prone or push it 5 feet away from you.
Okay.
So basically what the shove aside is doing is you're taking disadvantage on that check, but then if you succeed, you can kind of choose which square you shove them into, where with just a shove, you just shove them directly away from you.
Right.
So if you're using a grid and maybe you want to move them to the side for some reason, you could do that. You just have disadvantage. So I feel like this is only ever going to come into play if you use a grid, because otherwise you're probably not going to be so granular that you know that they need to be shoved to the left or right instead of back or something.
Right. Unless you're trying to get, well, if you're trying to get by them to do something else, why wouldn't you use overrun at that point?
Right. Yeah, because then you don't need to move them.
Right.
Necessarily.
Interesting. Okay. I like it. I like the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
And I like that they called it out. I'm actually, I'm glad we read this now, because I don't know why, but I always just had it in my head that you would be able to do this with the shove action. I didn't consider that there's an extra mechanic involved in trying to get them to the side or push them to the side. So that's good to know.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, just with the shove, you're shoving them away from you. So
or knocking them over. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you shove them, you're shoving them the direction you're facing. Where with this, you can shove them a different direction.
Right. Well, like okay. So the difference then between overrunning and shoving is if you're trying to get, let's say, like you're trying to break free of like a row of guards, just like the typical, not typical, but just like a simple basic example. You're trying to break through an area where you're trying to escape. If you could use overrun to just get by them and take off.
Yeah.
Or if you have more people behind you, you can use the shove aside to actually make a hole so that everybody can get through.
Right. Yeah. Then they don't have to overrun. They just follow you.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Or you could knock them down and then attack them with advantage.
Yeah. And then everybody can have them if you run by. Yeah.
Pincushion.
Problem solved.
All right. Next is a maneuver I love very much from my second edition days. Tumble. I think it works differently now. So a creature can try to tumble through a hostile creature's space, ducking and weaving past the opponent. As an action or a bonus action, you make a dexterity acrobatics check contested by the hostile creature's dexterity acrobatics. And if you win the contest, you can move through the hostile creature's space once this turn. So kind of similar end result as overrun. Just overrun is what you're going to do if you're more of a strength-based person, right. And tumble's more if you're dexterity-based.
Yeah.
And also overrun, you're opposing the enemy's strength, and tumble, you're opposing their dexterity.
Right.
So if you're fighting something really strong, I mean, it just makes sense. It'd be easier to roll between a giant's legs than to try to shove it aside or shove it over or just run over it, you know?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
It's pretty simple. So just a way to get through someone. Again, probably only useful if you're using a grid. I don't see this coming up much in Theater of the Mind.
Well, true, unless you're making a point of saying their path is blocked.
Right, like you're in a corridor and there's like two guards and they're blocking it and you can't get through.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so that's about it for episode 269 of Game Master's Journey. If you'd like to get a hold of me, I'd love to hear from you. You can shoot me an email at gamemastersjourney@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Lex Starwalker, and you can call my voicemail 951-GMJ-LEX1. That's 951-465-5391. Also, please join us on our communities on MeWe and Discord. You can find links to those as well in the show notes at starwalkerstudios.com/Game Master's Journey. And yeah, I'd love to see you in our community. We have a lot of fun. It's a great place to ask questions or share your latest triumphs as a GM or a player. And finally, if you enjoy Game Master's Journey and you'd like to help support the show, you can find all the ways to do that at starwalkerstudios.com/support. One of the best ways to do so is to check out one of my self-published D&D supplements. And you can also become a patron. You can find a link to my Patreon in the show notes as well at starwalkerstudios.com. I hope that you have a chance to play your favorite RPG this week. I hope you have a chance to run your favorite RPG. I'll be back soon with another episode of Game Master's Journey. Until then, game on.
This has been a Starwalker Studios production, your source for quality gaming and hobby podcasts.
This episode's music, courtesy of Cloudwalker, Transboy, Renfield, Stanko, and Ish. See the show notes for more details at starwalkerstudios.com/Game Master's Journey.